Welcome to the very first episode of Talk Yoga to Me by Teachers for Teachers. I'm Allison and I'm here with Jimmy, and we are so excited to kick this off.
Absolutely. We've both been teaching yoga for a while now, and we figured why not share all the things that we've learned, all the mistakes we've made, and all the tips we wish we had when we started.
Right? And that's exactly what this podcast is all about. Keeping it real about what it's like to be a yoga teacher, especially those who are new to it.
And in this podcast, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics, obviously getting into the asanas, the cueing, but also the philosophy and the different things that are relevant for people who are either teachers, becoming teachers, or students who are just looking for a little bit more information.
Absolutely. So today, for our very first episode, we wanted to share a little bit about ourselves and what brought us to yoga and why we became teachers and where we are now.
Yeah, we're going to dive right into the heart of it. So let's start with you, Allison. What brought you to yoga?
So, like so many people who started yoga, I was attracted to the physical aspect of yoga. The flexibility of it was kind of my main focus, and I was really introduced to yoga for the first time through like at-home DVD practice type things, like way back when everybody still had DVD players.
Yeah.
And
I remember those days.
It seems really long ago. And then I also did it in college. I was not really big into like gym classes at the time, so the idea of having to sign up for like a physical education credit sounded awful, so I decided to do yoga to avoid that. Isn't that great? And it was also kind of my first experience teaching too, because in that college course you had to practice yoga all the time. We talked a lot about yoga, and then we had to create little mini classes for our final, I guess. It's so long ago now, I don't really remember, but that was the very first time I kind of explored yoga as a student. From there, I really just fell in love with it, but I always took yoga classes at home and online, so I'd never really been to a studio as a student. When I was first starting out, I was always doing YouTube videos and things that were like 30 minutes or less. Like 20 minutes was kind of that sweet spot, the amount of time I could squeeze in for a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started to fall in love with it from there. It made me feel so good. What about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I remember like enjoying the little tumbling, learning in elementary school, and then getting into like a little bit of track in 6th grade, and I started to get into stretching. That's what I knew it as at that time.
Yeah.
But I started to enjoy the time under distress, if you will, even in like a forward fold, and noticing how I could use my breath to ease the sensations like in my hamstrings and slowly fold into it. And I just found that like fascinating. So even just as a kid, always enjoyed stretching, which yoga is much more than that, but I would say that's my first little drop in the bucket of it. And then took my first yoga class just in high school at a gym. Couldn't even tell you anything about it. But then whenever I moved away, I got into a Bikram studio in New York, and I did really love that practice. So intense, not something that I could ever really want to teach today, because it's such a hard level. But really loved it at the time. And from there, I kind of fell out of practice for a bit, and then a couple of years ago, maybe 2 now, found Roasted with Allison. And that really brought my commitment in. The style of teaching that you have, the style of studio that you created, and the community that's here that's so supportive brought me back into the fold, if you will, of yoga in a much more meaningful way. And then eventually, had to do your YTT,
sweet.
Oh
my gosh, I love that story so much. And I do like that you talked about your practice fell out and came back and things like that. And I feel like that's something we all experience. Like, I've definitely been on breaks from my practice for, years at a time. I was not good at maintaining a yoga practice while pregnant. I was just way too tired. And then with baby, I was like, oh no, this is not going to happen. And it took a long time to get back to that. So I think we all experienced that a little bit, which is part of the journey. And the fact that we keep getting called back to it just kind of like validates that it is supposed to be a part of our lives like that much more, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask too, like, what changed for you? Because we have these expectations of what yoga is, but when you first started getting into it as just a student, what were the things that you noticed, like, oh, there's more to this than what you thought?
Oh my gosh, like so many things. What a question. No, so literally I think the thing that changed it the most for me was like breathing, and I guess breathing in and of itself is kind of like, it takes you into that state of meditation, right? But the breathing really was a tool that I learned through yoga kind of at the beginning that I was able to apply so well in my personal life to kind of help battle like nerves and help battle like times that I was feeling really anxious and things like that. And it helped to kind of bring me back down to earth so many times and keep me feeling like really grounded and really just sure. I don't know. And I was like, there has to be something more to this than what we're learning in our 20-minute YouTube classes or 60-minute studio classes. And that was kind of the first time that I was like, I think that I want to share this with people, and kind of led me to start looking into YTTs.
Yeah, and on that track, how was that transition for you from going from YouTube DVD student, college student / teacher a little bit, but to a full real, like, going through a YTT?
Oh my gosh. So YTT I signed up for, and I'd never been to a studio class before. I just knew that I loved yoga. I knew there must be some type of secret sauce that I didn't know about yet, and I wanted to learn more about. And I also knew that it was something that like I wanted to share with people, but I needed to know more about it first. So never been to a studio class before, signed up for my yoga teacher training, didn't even know what most of the poses were called, let alone how to do a sun salutation or that there were different styles of yoga. But I just felt so called to like learn more and to share it with people that I came across, and to kind of, I don't know, it's like I just followed that intuition, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. It was a good jump for me.
Yeah, what a great decision.
Yeah, what about you? What kind of pushed you from student to this idea of like wanting to become a yoga teacher?
Yeah, I think it was all about deepening my own practice.
Yeah.
I spent a little bit of time at a monastery and in Mississippi of all places, and I really loved that practice, and I was already practicing here with you before that, but I think I was looking for something deeper, like a deeper commitment, and yoga was that outlet for me to deepen my own practice out of the love of yoga and meditation. But I never really, maybe it was a confidence thing, I never really expected I would ever teach. As much as I do like to help other people, I don't think I could put my mind on that. And like, I signed up 2 days before the YTT started, so clearly I was a bit indecisive. But really so glad that I did. And through the transformation really of learning more about yoga, I grew in confidence, and then decided probably about halfway through that I thought, okay, I can do this, and I want to share this with other people.
And how cool is that like, I mean, we were just talking like 30 days ago about how it was exactly our 1-year anniversary from the time our yoga teacher training started together. And to start in a place where you're like, I just want to know more, I don't want to teach anything, to halfway through kind of knowing, and then you literally finished your yoga teacher training and were teaching within 2 weeks. ish. It might have even been less than that or something.
Yeah, my community class, I think, was because you needed a sub. We finished on a Sunday, and you're like, hey, I need a sub on Tuesday.
Was it that soon?
It was Tuesday.
Oh
Because it was right
gosh.
before Christmas. It was like 2 or 3 days later, I'm pretty sure. But then my first real class was like, I think 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My first, like, this is my class time, and yeah.
How fun is that, the way that it works out? So it's like 2 days before you decided to sign up, and then here you are teaching 2 days after you finish. Amazing.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That's awesome. So on that note, though, how do you feel as like knowing that, I mean, you have a year of from yoga teacher training to teaching now? How do you feel as a like new teacher now? What's evolved? What's changed? Is it everything you thought it would be? Is it more? Is it less? I've asked you 17
No,
questions
you have,
at once, and I expect answers. for
all of them. Yeah, it's changed so much, yet also not at all at the same time. I feel like it's just like this process of slowly like letting the dust fall through and like finding the nugget of myself as a teacher, as a practitioner of yoga. And you know, I stray from that path all the time. Sometimes it's like, well, that class was not my favorite as far as like me teaching.
Because you think that, and then that's the class that all your students leave, and they're like, "That was amazing."
I know,
that
yeah.
was so good.
And it's hard because you can't see outside yourself. You're only in like your own barometer of, okay, I'm comparing it to my best class I've ever taught.
Yeah.
So in our heads, you know, yeah, we said right instead of left, or we missed a side or something, or the flow just didn't feel as natural. But in reality, our students have a completely different perspective of the class.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's definitely changed. I definitely find myself just building my own strength and confidence in yoga, but also in my life outside of yoga. And I think the philosophy comes into that, but also like going through strenuous and sometimes nerve-wracking kind of challenging things with ourselves, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, doing something new allows us like new ground for ourselves to grow outside of that particular practice. Yeah. But you've excelled. Like you've gone from student to quasi-teacher in college for a second
Yeah.
to, you know, now you're a studio owner and you lead YTTs.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
How's that been?
Okay, so like starting from the top, like, starting at the very beginning, I don't know, let me take you down my timeline real quick, my rabbit hole, if you will. So I think 2011 is when I did that college yoga course that I talked to you about.
Mm-hmm.
2013 is when I moved here, and that was when I had a lot of free time, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get real into this, and started learning a lot about yoga. And it wasn't until 2017 that I signed up for my yoga teacher training, and all the years leading up to it, it was kind of like that little pause we talked about. So 2013, I was really into yoga. 2014, really into yoga. 2014, pregnant, no more yoga.
Yeah.
So tired all the time. I was like, I didn't know about restorative yoga at that time. I was like, I'm too tired to move my body. 2015 baby, so no yoga. And I think it was about 2016, I started to get back into my practice a little bit. 2017, signed up for my yoga teacher training, only knowing my home practice, not really knowing where to go from there, right? And someone who is in my yoga teacher training, am I allowed to name drop on these?
If you think they won't mind, why not?
So Lauren was in my
She won't
yoga
mind.
teacher training, and she recently reminded me that like when we introduced ourselves and when we talked about what we wanted to do with our yoga teacher training things, I was like, you know, I love yoga. My husband is a coffee roaster. I want to put the two things together and kind of create like this community from there. Kind of have this practice of yoga that is built around community, but also yoga off your mat. Because the more I learned about yoga, the more I realized it's not what we do in the studio for 60 minutes. It's what we do once we step off our mat.
Yeah.
So living your yoga was kind of important to me. Not that we're all great at it all the time, but you know, it was an important aspect of the practice for me. And that's kind of why I like had this idea to bring these two things together. And I knew that I loved teaching yoga. So I got certified in 2018. I did anything and everything I could to teach yoga classes. I taught yoga on the beach. I was trying to teach at studios, but it was hard to get into studios at the time. And studios also just didn't pay well. So I didn't want to sacrifice my evenings with my family because I was already working a full-time job. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to sacrifice the little free time I had with my family to do that in that manner. So I was like, the only way I can see to accomplish all the things that I want to accomplish is to kind of open the studio. And luckily I had the support of my husband, who really just pushed me in the direction. He was like, you can. And I was like, I don't think I can. And he was like, you can. And I was like, I just feel like we should wait. And he was like, no, you can. And it was really cool. But I'm also very like a shy, very introverted person. So like the first class that we have at Roasted, I didn't teach. For the first couple years, I never told anybody I was the owner. I was like, yeah, I don't know who owns this place. I'll just really shy. I didn't want to take full responsibility for those things yet because I was just shy. And it's been in the past like 2 or 3 years maybe that I've been like, you know what? This is what I did. So here I am. Like, hello, it's nice to meet you. This is my role here type thing. So kind of stepping into like my presence, if you will. I don't know, stepping into my power, if you will, and kind of feeling good about that. But it was always kind of this path that I was unsure about, but knew that I wanted, and took it like little steps at a time until I eventually made it here. And the second that we had the studio, I was like, I not only want to teach people yoga, but I want to teach people the things that transformed yoga for me, and that was the yoga teacher training, right? Because I can show you all day long how to do a warrior two, but what is that really if you don't know all there is to know about yoga? Not that any of us know all there is to know about yoga. Like, we know the tip of the iceberg, and we are all just doing our best out here. Yeah.
But the philosophy behind some of it is, a huge and important aspect that often gets overlooked because you just don't have that much time in 60 minutes to operate. Yeah, unless you're really just, I don't know, if you can, please let me know how. Yeah, maybe send us some comments. Maybe that's some places we can grow too. Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and I love too that, you're right, in this studio, the combination of coffee and yoga really, it gives the conversation space. Yeah. Because so often in a studio, you like come in, you go into the studio, you lay your mat down, and then you leave. And here it actually fosters this like relationship among students, like teachers and students, and it creates that off the mat yoga. Yeah. That otherwise, if it's like you just have a little hallway out front and everyone's scurrying to leave as quickly as they can.
You're trying to get out as other people are trying to get in, and you have to get out of the way so, the next person can come, like, switch into your spot type thing. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, that's kind of what we're trying to do a little with this, right? Like, because how many people do we meet here that are only traveling here for a few days? We are operating out of a tiny little touristy, cozy beach town, and so many amazing people we meet, and they're like, we're here for 2 days. We're here for 3 days, and that's it. And it's so hard to meet such wonderful people, and then you just watch them come and go. But I guess such is life. But here we are.
But maybe this will give us a way to stay connected with those folks who do come and see us down here. Yeah. And encourage them to come back and see us or comment or interact online.
We are cultivating community here online because here we are. We miss you.
Yeah, we miss you. Come back next summer, or just like do 2 or 3 beach trips a year. Why not?
Right.
And I was going to say too, I love that you make it accessible, and I know that was a big part of creating a studio for you. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
What do you mean by accessible?
Well, I find it really amazing that you make the prices as for students accessible. So many studios, you could be dropping $30 a class, and that is not the case here. But also on the other side, you also make it sustainable for teachers. So I'm sure you're running on thin margins, but the cafe and everything probably helps. But you also pay really well compared to some studios, especially in our area. So how did that come into your decision making when you decided to open your studio?
Yeah, so man, there's a lot to that, because when I first started my yoga teacher training, I mentioned I'd never been to a studio class, and a lot of the reason behind that was, I was I was young. We just moved to the area. I don't know. But I couldn't afford to go to a yoga class. I couldn't afford to drop $25 for a 60-minute class on a Saturday. And so it became something where I knew I loved it, and that's why I did it online. Yoga is just expensive. And while we try our best to make yoga affordable, we'll get into the business of yoga down the line, I'm sure. So, you do have to charge for something. There is that exchange where you're giving your energy as a teacher, you're giving your time, you're giving your preparation. But at the same time, yoga is so beneficial to everybody in so many ways that making it accessible, or at least as affordable as you can, was really, really important to me. And not only that, but I experienced it myself where I didn't want to trade my time for what teacher pay was, because unless you were a traveling yogi going to festivals and have brand sponsorships and things like that, it can be really challenging to make good money as a yoga teacher, or at least livable money, so
Sure.
Paying teachers as well as you can was always one of my biggest priorities as a studio owner, was to kind of not do the things that turned me off from teaching, but rather do things that supported teachers as best a studio in a small beach town can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's always been something that's really important to me as a studio owner, and we're all just out here trying to do our best.
We are trying to be a little bit better every day, on the mat and off the mat.
Absolutely. Do we have anything else that you want to add to your teaching journey that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm still a very green teacher. I'm very new. I just taught my 100th class very recently.
So exciting. I was so excited.
Yeah, I can't believe it came up. That was
I can't believe it came
surreal.
up in less than a year of teaching. That's what's wild.
Yeah, I had to recount, and I might have been a little bit off, but I'm definitely there now. I was off by a couple, It's hard to keep track of all those things a little bit, but definitely hit 100 at this point.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think I'm just excited to continue to grow as a teacher, also as a student. My practice is nowhere near over. It's every day off the mat and a few times a week on the mat. And I'm just excited to continue to offer new classes here and expand one day into a 300-hour.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness. I'm really glad that you said something just now, and it was about being a student still, because so often we become teachers and we forget to stay students. And I think that it's so important as a teacher to constantly continue to learn, whether you're doing it through continuing education and training, but also taking yoga classes again.
Yeah.
We've talked about it recently. I've been struggling to get into classes because, life gets really busy and hectic, and sometimes classes don't start at times I can make it, or they end before I have to be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I've recently found myself getting really back into my home practice, which has been really, really nice. To just be able to roll out my mat at home, take some of the knowledge that I have, and be able to tune into my body a lot to practice on my mat at home just opens up so much practice time, and so much I'm able to commit to my practice a lot better, which is so great, because I got away from my home practice for a really long time. Just my home we have kids and dogs and cats, and it's chaotic.
Yeah.
So it can be challenging when you roll out your mat and your animals all come sit on it and they're like, thank you. we've been looking for this.
We're ready for a nap, right?
Yeah,
here.
or you roll out your mat and you're like, oh my gosh, there's dishes in the sink. I better
yeah.
take a break and do
the
those
mind.
instead.
You start time traveling out of your mat and
Absolutely.
all the things you have to do.
Which is really easy to do from home. Do you practice at home often?
I usually use it as my warm up and cool down for a workout.
Okay.
So
cool.
usually I'm not doing a full like even 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Some days it winds up being like it's like sometimes it's my rest day workout, if you will, of like a slow flow. I did that actually this week and didn't even realize that an hour and a half went by. So I guess sometimes I do like a lot of at home yoga, but that I would say most consistently, it's my warm up, it's my cool down.
Yeah.
And then coming into class, that's really as a student.
You still get to practice, or you still come to practice. I'm always
Hopefully
so proud of you for squeezing
times
it
a
into
week.
your schedule.
Yeah, but I've been seeing those pincha videos. You've been doing that at home practice, and it shows.
And my home
it's
practice
awesome.
is only like, it's 20 minutes max is usually what I can squeeze into mat time, but I can do it, once in the morning, once in the evening, that type thing. So I have a little bit of time and flexibility to do that, which is really nice. But that all said, I don't know where I was going to next, but I was actually going to say, it's just really crazy how we all kind of come to yoga through, such different paths. And it would be really cool if any of you want to share your paths with us. We love to connect and kind of stay in touch and things like that. We'll give you some ideas at the end on how to do that. But it's cool that we're all kind of drawn to teach for similar reasons. Something that it's all about sharing what yoga has done for us and wanting to give that to others.
Yeah.
Experience it.
It's such a personal thing, and we'd really love to hear any of your personal experiences, or if something resonated with you that we talked about today. We'd love to hear about it and to be able to maybe highlight some of those things on future episodes. So definitely reach out through social media, talk yoga to me on Instagram or through YouTube, wherever you found us. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. So that's a little bit about us. In future episodes, we'll be diving into topics that really impact yoga teachers, especially those just starting out. But it can be really interesting information even if you're not a yoga teacher. You'll learn a little bit more about yoga through this podcast and kind of learn a little bit about the hurdles of what it's like to be a yoga teacher, as well as those things that just really fulfill you, if you will. Or maybe you're on the fence about becoming a yoga teacher. So this is for all of you in all of those ways, and we're so excited to share this with you going forward.
Yeah. I don't know where.
Thank you for tuning in to Talk Yoga with me.
Yeah. We're excited to be doing this.
Yes, we are.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.